Okay, I want to tell you folks a story that takes place in Okinawa. It's a fairly long story, and it begins in 1945 under the Battle of Okinawa. The Battle of Okinawa, the last battle of the Pacific War, or World War II actually, the last land battle, nicknamed in the history books the Steel Typhoon. That helps you imagine what it was like. During that battle, about 1 in 4 Okinawans were killed. If there's a family of 4, on the average, at least one of them was killed in that battle. During that battle, while it's still going on, this photograph is taken while it's still going on, the U.S. military seized a patch of land in the center of the island because it looked level to them. It had been a rural area with farmhouses and fields and schools and so forth. Most of it was knocked down by the bombing. Here they are bulldozing the rest of the houses down and bulldozing the fields flat to build Phtemma Air Base. During the time they did that, where were the owners of this land? They were either dead or they were still in hiding somewhere, or they were being kept in internment camps prepared for them by the U.S. military. When they came back from the internment camps, they found that their land was gone and it was now a base and they had no land anymore. That's 1945. Now we'll fast forward 50 years to 1995. We're jumping over a lot of history, a lot of very painful history, but I don't have time to go into that now. I'm just telling you this one story. 50 years later, that is 1995, 3 American GIs got it into their heads to go out and rape somebody, and they looked around and found an elementary school girl, that is not even a teenager, a pre-teenager, and they gang raped her. Now this was nothing new, not a new thing in Okinawa, but the island blew up. People got furiously angry, and a huge protest movement began at that point. In response to that, the following year, 1996, the U.S. and Japanese governments said, okay, we'll remove, no, we won't remove, we will move we will move Phtemma Base to Henoko. Henoko is a fishing village in the northern part of Okinawa. We'll build a new base there, all paid for and planned by Japan, Japanese money. At first it seemed that they were going to say that they would kick Phtemma Base out of Okinawa altogether, but when people read the fine print, they found it was going to be moved to another part of the island. How did people like that? Okay, another 23 years fast forward to October 2019. That means now, right now. Right now, in this month, in October 2019, the sit-in at the gate of the construction site in Henoko has passed through its 1,800th day of sitting in. They sit in there blocking trucks when the trucks come every day except Sundays, holidays, and typhoon days. I think if somebody did the paperwork, this could make the Guinness Book of Records. I don't think there's any sit-in, active sit-in that's ever gone on that long. Certainly not going on now. But nobody's bothered to do the paperwork. People are too busy. So Okinawans are opposed to this base, this construction. Why do Okinawans oppose this base? Like the poets say, let me count the ways. Well, I can't count all the ways or we'd run out of time. But I'll tell you some of the principal ways, some of the principal reasons people oppose these bases. One, and this is, maybe I put it at the top of the list, other people would put something else at the top of the list. It is perceived as discrimination. Why? There are a lot of bases in mainland Japan and in Okinawa, but Okinawa, presently a prefecture, comprises 0.6% of all of Japanese territory. Now, be careful if you've forgotten your math that you learned in school. This is not 6%. This is 0.6% of all of Japanese territory. And in this tiny sliver of land, more than 70% of all the U.S. bases in Japan are located. Just on the face of it, that is discrimination. That's one big reason. If you ask anybody what's wrong with these bases, those statistics are the first things that they will mention. Once again, please understand how small 0.6% is. The remainder of Japan is 99.4%. That helps you to understand how crowded this little island is with U.S. bases. The Japanese people want bases nearby, but not in their own land. They'd rather have them in Okinawa, which they perceive as a different land. That's one reason. A second reason is that at Henoko is on the coast. It's actually on a peninsula. The construction site is a peninsula going out into a bay. And Ora Bay is the home of a pristine coral garden that ought to be a World Heritage Site. It's probably going to be, it's already being destroyed by the construction. It is a breathtaking, splendid natural phenomenon, a miracle of coral. They want to fill, not all of that bay, but part of it with dirt and build an airbase on top of it. More reasons. Okinawans understand the bases here and the increase in bases characterized by the construction at Henoko, not as preventing war or keeping war away from Okinawa, but as inviting war to Okinawa. The United States has been getting into war after war for years now, mostly with U.S. enemies that the Okinawans don't perceive as enemies. During the Vietnam War, Okinawan people did not have any quarrel with the Vietnamese, but since the war was largely waged from Okinawa, they felt guilty, complicit in this American war. So there's actually two reasons. One, two ways that it increases the danger of war. One, if any other country attacks Okinawa with missiles or with bombers or something, why would they do that? They would do it because there are U.S. bases here. There's no other reason. And number two, even if war doesn't actually come to Okinawa Islands, the American wars involve Okinawans in wars with people with whom they have no quarrel, and they hate that. Other reasons, the bases are terrible polluters on this narrow island. The water is polluted, the air is polluted, largely from the U.S. bases. There's lots of crime, crime against women, like the one I mentioned, or young girls, hit-and-run accidents, drunk driving, and accidents, airplanes, helicopters, ospreys, crashing. All that's happening. Every time something like that happens, people are reminded there's bases here. And they don't like it. Now, those are Okinawan reasons. I'm talking mostly to English-speaking people, many of whom will be Americans. Why should Americans oppose this new base construction? First, for all of the above. Americans of conscience should oppose this new base for the same reason that the Okinawans do. But Americans will also have some reasons for opposing them that the Okinawans do not have. For example, if you're someone who wants to have this base, if you think it's in the American interest, in the military's interest, to have a nice super base at Henoko, even if you think that, probably you're never going to get your wish. You're never going to get it. It's not going to happen. And so you're wasting your wishes by hoping for that. The Okinawan opposition has slowed down construction to a what do you call it, a crawl. 23 years have passed since the idea was first proposed of moving Futenma Base to Henoko. 23 years, and still today construction on the base itself has not begun. There's several reasons for this. One is the opposition. As I said, there's a sit-in every day in front of the construction site that slows down the trucks. There are lawsuits that have, during the lawsuit, construction had to be halted. There is the governor refusing to give permits, other city governments refusing to cooperate. From in every way possible, every peaceful way possible. This is a completely peaceful anti-base movement. The construction has been interfered with, and the result is that 23 years have passed and still there is no base to be seen. To give you an idea of the opposition, there are many pictures I could have shown you of people being carried away by riot police, sit-inners, and so on. I thought I would just show you this one picture. I hope you can see it. That blue line is security people. Now, these are not even the riot police. The riot police are not present here. This is a line of traffic cops, basically, a private security agent, people who guard buildings and direct traffic. Now, each of these fellows gets a nice salary, gets the salary of a public worker. You see how many there are, and behind them, of course, there's another group, as many as you see there, to come and relieve them when these guys get tired. It is said that, I have to look this up, I keep forgetting. It costs $6,700,000 a year just to hire the security people. Now multiply that, if you've got a pencil and paper there, multiply 6,700,000 by 23, and you'll get the figure that it has cost so far. Well, maybe a little less because there wasn't so much security at the beginning. But every year, $6,700,000 is spent just on security. And that, I guess that does include the riot police. These fellows and the riot police and their buses, the ones from outside the prefecture, are housed in resort hotels, not barracks. They live a nice life, except their work is pretty boring under the hot sun. But it's not only the Okinawan people who oppose this base. I don't want to sound mystical, but you get the feeling that construction is opposed also by the island itself, by the Okinawan land. It is as if the Okinawan land is protesting against being treated this way. First of all, it has been discovered, or it has been remembered, that there are 2 earthquake faults, active faults, directly beneath the construction site. Now, it's rumored that when this base is completed, if it ever is, they will store nuclear weapons there. Now think about that. Is it really going to make sense to have a nuclear weapons storage site on top of 2 active earthquake faults? There, the earth from deep down can get a very serious revenge. Also, the site is surrounded by hills, rather high, and on top of the hills there are buildings, there's people's homes, there's elementary and junior high school. There's a technical school for college-age students that has a 4 or 5-story dormitory. All of these are in violation of the U.S. Department of Defense height regulations for the height of buildings in the vicinity of airstrips. So one of the reasons for moving one of the reasons for moving Phtemma Base out of its present site was supposed to be that it was a terribly dangerous base, violating height limits, surrounded by buildings. But there's no improvement. They get to Henoko, again, the place is surrounded by buildings. Oh, also, huge, very tall transmission towers that look to me for the world like osprey snares. By osprey, I don't mean the bird, I mean the helicopter. They look like traps for catching helicopters and pulling them out of the sky. Huge towers with wires strung between them. If I were a pilot, I would not like to fly around there. But then there's one more that is the big one and the one that is most talked about these days, and that is that it turns out that the soil tests of the sea bottom in the area that's supposed to be filled is soft. In technical language, it has an N value of 0. An N value of 0 is tested in the following way. You put a hollow drill, you run a hollow drill from a ship down till it rests on the sea bottom. Then you hit it with a hammer of a fixed weight, and the number of blows to drive the hammer down 6 inches is the N value. An N value of 30 is supposed to be a firm sea bottom. That means that you have to bang on this pipe 30 times to get it to go down 6 inches. An N value of 0 means that it didn't need to be hit by the hammer at all. The pipe, you put it down there, it just keeps on going. It sinks out of sight. And so it is what is called the mayonnaise sea bottom. People say that the Vietnam War was for the United States a quagmire. A quagmire is a metaphor for a very boggy, muddy area that if you drive some vehicle into it, you'll never get it out again. And it might just disappear, sort of like quicksand. Vietnam was a metaphorical quagmire. The bottom of Oura Bay is an actual quagmire. They call it the mayonnaise sea bottom. It's about the same consistency as mayonnaise. Would you like to build your house on a foundation of mayonnaise? I guess not. And there are places in which the mayonnaise sea bottom extends down to 90 meters below sea level. 100 meters is the length of a soccer field, right? So it's just 10 meters short of a goal. 90 meters. Anything you put there sinks out of sight. So if they were going to build a seawall out of caissons, but they realized that if they dropped caissons down there, they would just disappear. So what do you do? According to the Defense Bureau, the Japanese Defense Bureau that's building this thing, what you do is you put in what they call sand piles. These are actually, it's not piles like this, they're pillars of sand implanted in the slime. And the way you do that is, I'm not sure how big these drills are. They look about like this. You pound down a hollow drill as far as you can get it. You fill it with sand. Then you pull the drill out slowly and leave the sand. So in the hole that has been pounded into the slime, now there's a pillar of sand. And sand is relatively firm. So all they need to do is do that 77,000 times. 77,000 sand pillars, and it will be firm, they say. Well, there's two problems with that. Well, there's more than two problems. One is they're going to run into problems along the way, because you always do. Two is, I made it problem A. They say it will take about 5 more years, 5 additional years of construction time just to firm up the sand bottom, firm up the sea bottom using the sand method. But there's another problem that's bigger, which I've labeled as B, and that is the longest drills that exist anywhere in Japan, drills for doing this operation, are 70 meters. 70 meters is as far as they can reach. Some people say, I'm not sure, that there are no 90-meter drills anywhere in the world. So a drilling operation to 90 meters has never been attempted anywhere. This would be the first time. You know when you do something for the first time, you're going to run into one headache after another. But in any case, they cannot, with the present technology, drill to 90 meters, only to 70 meters. One government official said, I guess it's the official government position, if you can call it a position, which I would state as, well, maybe 70 meters will be enough. It's all we can do anyway. So they talk as if they're going to go ahead and drill 70-meter holes and fill them with 70-meter sand piles, even though there's another 20 meters of slime below that. So to take the second word from Quagmire, they are mired down. Or to put it differently, as the saying goes, they are in way over their heads. Think of what is before them. But by them I mean Japan's Defense Bureau that is doing this constructing. First of all, well, they've put out bids. They've put out a call for bids for companies to offer to do the sand pile operation. The deadline is next year. So if it goes well, maybe they'll start next year putting in sand piles. And that means it will take 5 years after that. That's an additional 5 years. Then after they get the sand piles in, then they have the next huge job is to build a seawall from the sea bottom up to the surface of the sea, up to sea level. They've got to build a wall. Only when they have a wall, then they can start putting landfill behind the wall. How much landfill do they need to put in? 20 million cubic meters. Sorry, I forgot to put in the cubic meters. 20 million cubic meters to write in your mind. Cubic meters. 20 million cubic meters. I keep repeating it because it's so unbelievable. I want to make sure you really heard it. I'll say it one more time. 20 million cubic meters of landfill. When they get that done, finally, they'll be able to start building the base on top of that, if they get that done. So people are saying, probably from now, that's another 20 to 25 years before they get it done, if they ever get it done. But if they get it done in 20 to 25 years from now, that will be from the time it was first proposed, a half century, almost 50 years. The idea of building this thing, one of the arguments for building this thing was that Phtemma base is dangerous and should be moved as soon as possible. As soon as possible is turning out to be a half century, if at all. And probably, even after it's built, if it is, it will start to sink because there's that extra 20 meters of slime, mayonnaise, underneath the landfill. Of course it will sink. Government people say, well, Kansai International Airport at Osaka, that's sinking. And Haneda Airport in Tokyo, that's sinking. So it's no big deal if an airport sinks. It just sinks little by little, and you put jacks under it and you shore it up. I'm not sure if the U.S. military and the U.S. government likes this kind of talk very much, even though it's not costing them money. This is being built with taxpayers' money. But there's evidence that the U.S. is getting irritated by this project. We know that the Senate, the United States Senate, the upper house, wants a review, wants the Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of Defense, to do a review of this Henoko project. This is being debated actually right now, this week. I'm speaking now in mid-October, and this debate is going on right now in mid-October, although they're arguing more about impeachment, but they're also arguing about this. We shall see. If they do a review, which would mean a careful investigation of what's going on, I believe that the U.S. Senate is going to be horrified, going to label this whole thing a boondoggle, and do what they can to get out of it as quickly as possible. As for the Okinawan side, what the Okinawans say, the sit-inners who go there every day or once a week or twice a week, depending on the person, what they say is very clear, which is, we're going to win. We are going to prevent this new base from being built in our land. How do we know? How are we going to win? It's simple. Because we won't quit. We won't quit until we do. It's as simple as that. That's where the story stands right now. Look in your newspapers. Maybe you'll see something about Okinawa popping up once in a while between impeachment talk and other issues. This is going to become an issue. Thanks for listening.